The sound of flames licking the ceiling of the corrugated iron hut woke the occupants, believed to be in their mid-40s. Fire crews arrived just after 2 o'clock this morning, but the fire had already done its damage, destroying almost everything inside.
We did have some issues, being a very remote property. We actually did get in, had some trouble finding it originally, and also gaining a water supply.
A woman suffered smoke inhalation while a man was taken to Cessnock Hospital with burns and cuts to his hands, sustained while trying to save 4 dogs and 2 cats. Unfortunately, the animals perished. It's the 4th house fire in Cessnock in the past week and acts as a reminder of the importance of smoke alarms.
A fire can develop very quickly in a room, and that's why smoke alarms are very important to people. It's an early warning system and a very cheap form of insurance.
Colleen West, NBN News.
The small but passionate group of locals say they're not opposed to this site being redeveloped, but would like to see far fewer units than what's proposed.
We believe that the number and the density that's been planned for this area is far in exceeding what this area could handle. We would be very happy if basically it could be chopped in half.
Under the plan lodged by Simhill Proprietary Limited, 52 1- and 2-bedroom units would replace 8 houses on 10 blocks bounded by Newcastle Road, Douglas Street and Abbott Street. An internal courtyard and parking would also be included. Developer Hilton Grujon has refuted claims made by residents that the development would become a ghetto. He says it's not being built for public housing, rather for the elderly, singles and young couples looking to own a property.
None of those groups constitute a crime wave, which is another problem that has been raised.
The development application is expected to go before Council in October.
I know how it missed Cameron Smith, and it just missed his ear, I think, and just went through. I was, I don't know, all the practice, I guess, paid off.
On the biggest day of the season, a moment's silence was a fitting way to honour football stalwart Bob Mountford, who passed away midweek. Time enough too for Ben Lane to reflect on his 6 winning season-deciding matches before focus turned to a 7th. Broadmeadow started warm favourites, and it was soon clear why. With Peter Haynes and co firing away up front, it seemed just a matter of time before they'd break through. Broadmeadow's biggest threat in the first half came from themselves, with an own goal scare. The second half went much like the first, as the Magic continued to pepper away on goal. But fortune continued to favour the brave Azzurri. After regular and extra time failed to find a winner, it went into a shootout. Azzurri skipper Josh Maguire's heartbreaking miss allowing Broadmeadow to claim the last, but most important, silverware of the season.
As local candidates made their final bid for votes, many early birds in the Port Stephens local government area made their mark ahead of council elections. More than 6,000 people would take advantage of the pre-polling option to avoid the risk of attracting a $55 fine for not voting.
We have no absentee voting, so this allows 2 weeks for people to come and get organised and vote beforehand.
7,000 pre-poll locations throughout Australia opened today, and in the Hunter, Port Stephens Council is showcasing the longest list of nominations. Those over the age of 18 will decide between 78 candidates divided over 3 wards. The people of Port Stephens won't just be voting for councillors. They'll have a second ballot to consider when they vote, with a referendum being held on a popularly elected mayor for the Shire. Port Stephens Council is, for the first time, asking residents to decide whether councillors should continue to elect the mayor or whether they should be popularly elected by voters. But not everyone is aware the council has asked for the referendum.
A few people have come there this morning and said to me, what was that we were voting for? So that's probably the attitude, that it's probably not been canvassed enough for the people in the local community that is actually the case.
Port Stephens Council says it is the right time to put the question to the general public.
Well, the current council felt that the electorate in Port Stephens was mature enough to decide on their own mayor.
Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
I will take responsibility and accountability for the performance of the whole council. I am the only candidate, the only person who is prepared to stand down after 2 years if the council can't work together as a cohesive, effective team.
The Hornet was taking part in a routine operation over the skies of the Upper Hunter when a device that monitors training performance by recording manoeuvres fell off the wing of the aircraft. It's believed to be lost in remote country near Bylong.
I think the chances of finding it are pretty slim. It's about 6 feet long, 4 to 5 inches in diameter. It looks a bit like a missile, but in that sort of country you'd have to be very lucky to find it.
The equipment has been removed from the rest of the fleet until the cause of the malfunction is known.
It looks like we've just had a failure of some of the mounting points on the actual pod itself. So, we still have the mounting part on the aircraft, but the pod's gone.
If anyone does come across the pod, they're being asked to notify local police.
It's not dangerous, so if we never find it, it's not going to hurt us, but it is expensive hardware and we would like to get it back.
Penny Evans, NBN News. The markets were strong at Maitland sales today, buoyed by wet weather over the weekend, encouraging buyers. On the first day of spring, the budding clover adding to confidence for a strong season.
We've had a very wet winter, wet autumn leading up to it, and the best rainfall we've had for a decade, I think, 10 years.
A lot of moisture in the ground still, but if we get some warmer weather and keep getting this rain, we're in for a fantastic season.
While coastal parts of the Lower Hunter recorded a drier than usual winter, the wet weekend helped the Upper Hunter to spill over its average.
In fact, if we look at the average, the rainfall for the total of this year in Scone, it's well above average.
Scone recorded 4 extra frosts and it was 2 degrees colder across most of the region, but the Weather Bureau insists winter was pretty average and spring is likely to be the same.
And certainly the outlook for the next 3 months doesn't show any strong indication for above or below average rainfall or temperatures.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
With the news on Matt Hilder still sinking in, the positive medical report on Scott Giroux was just what the club needed. The man himself is already thinking about this Friday night in Brisbane, a match Newcastle must win to reach the finals.
We lose this weekend, we could be done if results don't go our way. So we've got to get up there to Brisbane and give it our all and do our best to get the 2 points. And if we do, then we know we're in.
Corey Patterson will need to prove he's over concussion in order to take to the field. He's still suffering from headaches. Although it's a toe problem that's hampering Kurt Gidley, you think that's the least of his worries after a big weekend too. The club will welcome back several from injury also for the do-or-die game, with the team announced tomorrow. Brisbane will use the match to farewell some of their outgoing players in a game that will mark Carmichael Hunt's 100th match.
Another match in the jersey I love, so I'm going to go out there and enjoy it.
With Sam Thaiday in this sort of mood, it's already shaping as a big night in Brisbane. Jim Callanan, NBN News. As they say, winners are grinners. And even in the mud, it was clear to see who had claimed the 2008 Newcastle Rugby League Premiership. As West did just that, Cessnock was still wondering what had happened. After levelling the match 6-6 early in the second half, the Goannas looked to have extended their lead after Sean Skewthorpe appeared to legally strip injured West centre Wes Tillett of the ball and scoot away to score. However, it was called back. History shows Chris Pine did get to score Cessnock's second, but it's John Reynolds who will forever live in West's folklore after the winger scored all 12 of their points to claim the premiership by just 2. The Group 21 deciders are on this Sunday at Singleton, with the home side to take on Greater Branxton in all 3 grades. There's nothing quite like the euphoria of major premiership success. But few would have imagined this decider being so close. Broadmeadow had dominated all year and the grand final itself, but the match remained scoreless after 120 minutes of regular and extra time play, leaving it to a hit-and-miss shootout right till the end.
Mate, nervous, but at the end of the day, mate, it was unbelievable. It's great for the boys, for the Masso community.
Wasn't it just? From magic harmonicas to Broadmeadow boots. It truly was a magic finish. Brad Waters earning extra silverware as man of the match. As their celebrations continue, tomorrow is D-Day for those clubs wanting to challenge them next season.
Dozens of cabbies lined across Energy Australia Stadium's car park, sending a very visual message to CabCharge. They want the company to finally get its catapult booking system in order.
This is a line in the sand. We're trying to tell CabCharge we need something done about it, and we need something done past. We've just had enough, and it just doesn't seem to be improving. If anything, it's getting worse.
For months, the system has been plagued with problems, and now many drivers are facing financial difficulty.
It is terrible. I'm to the point of, just cutting it.
This has become a nightmare for me. I'm ready to quit.
Cabbies left the stadium in convoy for phase 2 of the protest. Around 80 taxis, or half the fleet, parked in and around the Newcastle taxi base. Drivers stayed for an hour in a desperate attempt to get CabCharge to fix the system. In response to the protest, Newcastle Taxis, on behalf of CabCharge, issued a statement saying the company was making changes to the system and that both drivers and passengers would have noticed improvements. Drivers are already taking their protest to the next level.
We are now placing petitions in all the taxis as of today. We're encouraging all the people who have had problems in the past, over the past 4 months, with the booking system, with the phones, any issues that they've had, to sign our petition.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It was a bad start to the day for the driver of this ute. The 26-year-old electrical contractor from Newcastle was on his way to work at the Red Bank power station around 7 o'clock when he decided to drive his company utility across the flooded bridge at Leamington Road at Jerry's Plains.
He got about 3/4 of the way across before his vehicle stalled and he became trapped. He phoned 000 from his mobile phone and managed to climb himself up onto the tray of the vehicle.
And that's where he stayed for an hour. In the meantime, police and the SES were trailering boats to the scene, but it was the local RFS crew which came to the rescue with its tanker.
We actually backed the Cat 1 into the river and backed it all the way up, nearly touching the bonnet of the ute, and got him to transfer, get him to walk onto the bonnet of his ute and walk onto the back of the Cat 1.
The spike in the level of the Hunter River was caused by 65 millimetres of rain, which drenched the upper Hunter over the weekend. Police are urging motorists to use common sense.
It's very deceiving how quickly the water can rise, how strong the water is, especially in petrol-powered vehicles, how quickly the vehicle can become stalled.
I think he was a very relieved man with the look of him. I don't think he's really happy with sticking out there in the middle of the water with no one else really helping him. But when we got in there and got him onto this, and back on the dry land, he was quite happy.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There's a plant nicknamed the Chinese violet sprouting across Newcastle and Port Stephens, and it's not as pretty as you think.
It's also starting to spread into some of our bushland areas, and we're particularly concerned that it may spread into agricultural and horticultural areas.
The issue of weeds, their impact and management is the subject of a 2-day conference drawing experts from across the nation to the Hunter. While many write weeds off as a mere nuisance, their economic impact is staggering, costing Australia an estimated $4 billion a year.
Most of that is agricultural lost production, but as well as that there's a big environmental cost as well.
The Australian Weeds Committee will use the information gathered at this week's conference to help frame policies and design funding programs to treat the pests.
Weeds are everyone's problem. It affects all of us in some way or another.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
There's going to be a lot of competition for those places, and when you're going to be playing with and against national team players, it's such a great opportunity.
After going down by penalties in Sunday's NBN State League Grand Final, another painful loss for Azzurri FC.
Been in top flight for over 40 years, and now to sort of start again in UFM competition is heartbreaking. It's hard to take.
The Whitebridge-based club in Lake Macquarie were told today they ranked outside the 8 when being evaluated by an independent review panel for the NBN State League over the next 3 seasons. Over 5 years ending in March, they were assessed on facilities, which carried the most weight, then financial status, management, playing strength and development. However, the clubs maintain they're not being told what category let them down.
I would like to get some information from Northern New South Wales Football as to where we were lacking as far as the criteria is concerned.
Of course, both Lake Macquarie, which won the minor premiership last year, and Azzurri felt that they not only met the criteria, but scored better than those who remain in the 8.
To miss out and not be able to understand and ask why we missed the criteria based on other teams, that's the hardest part.
The Federation has already warned any challenge will be a waste of time.
There's no review of this. The decision of the board is final. They accepted the recommendations of the review panel, and there is no avenue for the clubs to appeal.
Nevertheless, both clubs are considering their options, which include an invitation to play in First Division.
Whether legal action is one of those options, I'm not a lawyer. It's something we have to look at and ask the question.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Our emergency services have always worked together, saving lives and property and preventing disasters. But following Health Minister Reba Ma's announcement, several rescue units will be taken out of ambulance control and handed to the New South Wales fire brigades, a rift is beginning to form.
It's ludicrous. Yeah, the decisions they've made are ill-informed. They're not backed by statistics that can be validated.
Justifying her decision, Ms Ma said paramedics are focused on emergency patient care rather than using rescue tools. So it makes sense for our paramedics to focus on patient care. The Fire Brigade Union wouldn't comment on the decision, but the Police Association condemned the move.
To lose that skill set where you have rescuers who have an ability to be able to treat people medically at the scene at the time is a great loss to our community.
Rescue units in Singleton and Rutherford remain in the ambulance service, but the union fears it won't be for long.
At the moment, I'd say they're excluded simply because there's no fire units that can take over those positions. We're meeting tomorrow in Sydney to work out what industrial action we're going to take, and it will be quite severe in this instance.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
In November last year, police involved in Strikeforce Emily swooped on several Hunter addresses, crushing a major drug supply syndicate. The 18-month-long investigation focused on the distribution of crystal methamphetamine, also known as ice, along with cocaine and ecstasy. They charged Nicholas Martinelli of New Lambton with supplying a commercial quantity of prohibited drug. Today, Newcastle District Court was told that during the police investigation, more than 3,000 telephone calls and SMSs were intercepted, which involved Martinelli arranging drug exchanges. In sentencing today, Judge Ralph Coulahan said this is an extremely serious offence. The business was active, sophisticated and extensive. It was a daily operation involving many clients. The judge also remarked that he is not a drug user. It was purely for profit and greed, possibly to support a gambling habit. The 64-year-old was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months jail. He'll be due for parole in October October 2014. The judge explained the sentence should act as a deterrent. He said the damage to the youth of this community is enormous. It is persons such as this who perpetuate suffering and misery. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It was a struggle that stretched our national resources to the limit. Our soldiers, sailors and airmen so bravely battled and many died protecting our way of life. But there's another important group which often goes unrecognised. At today's commemorative ceremony at Newcastle Civic Park, there was special mention of the industry workers and the role they played in wartime.
They weren't overseas fighting, but they were doing vital work back here producing the armaments.
In Newcastle, businesses like BHP, Lysarts and Stewarts and Lloyds had to adapt to new methods of production as they pumped out vital equipment, from bullet casings to helmets to pontoons.
We went from a manufacturing role to a repetition manufacturing role where mass production was required, which was not really done in Australia prior to 1939.
Today's gathering heard that as well as working extended shifts, industry employees would often join volunteer defence corps.
After their shift work, they would also don uniforms and protect their industries from attack.
And while we may have lost a lot of that heavy industry in the Hunter, it remains a vital part of the region and indeed the country's wartime heritage. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Just like the congregation's founders more than a century ago, 4 nuns rode into Lochinvar on a horse-drawn buggy. It was fitting that the sisters were met by dozens of high school students. It was 125 years ago today that the original nuns began teaching in the region. Since the order began in 1883, around 500 nuns have joined their ranks, with 107 still serving.
Not many of us are teaching, but we're doing all kinds of other ministries. For example, Penola House in Hamilton, where we look after refugee families.
A historical display was also on show, depicting the Lochinvar Sisters of St Joseph roles in the past and their way of life. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The pace of life at Catherine Hill Bay is set to change. Today, Planning Minister Frank Sartor announced the approval of Rose Group's plan to build 600 houses next to the Heritage Village, as well as almost 200 on the western side of the Pacific Highway at Gwandolin. It was news that many locals didn't want to hear.
We've never said really no development. We've just said appropriate development. 600 houses is not appropriate development right on the coast.
Look, it's part of an ongoing cosy relationship between developers and the government. Developers were able to talk to the Minister for Planning during the Lower Hunter Regional Strategy in a way that the community wasn't, and there's a result that favours developers.
Rose Group issued a statement today thanking the Department of Planning. But it's not the only company wanting to develop the area.
It's the first of 2 large dominoes that are falling. This is the development by the Rose Group, and of course we're still facing the development by Coal and Allied.
Residents say they won't stop campaigning against the scale of the plans.
But there's a rally on the 19th of next month down in Hyde Park with all the areas in the state who have been affected by overdevelopment and being locked out of the decision making by this government. We've got a long way to go yet.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Despite not being named in the team to meet the Broncos, Knights coach Brian Smith is, quote, very confident of Zeb Tayev featuring in Friday night's game, his comeback from injury. That's all Smith was giving away, though, on what presents as a busy match day eve.
We'll just see tomorrow in who's available and how they bounce back from training today, and obviously what happens with Hilda tonight.
Things look much clearer for Corey Patterson, literally, having recovered from concussion to take his place in the back row.
Yeah, mate, I'm ready to go. Had a bit of a sore head at the start of the week, but no, it's come up good and can't wait for Friday night.
If the Knights need any motivation, it's to finish inside the top 8 on their terms, rather than rely on other final round results to get them through, and that means beating the Broncos and their stable of stars.
Lockyer, Ennis, Hodges, Hunt, the list rolls on, Carroll.
And Bennett. The match could very well be his last in Brisbane as Broncos coach, not that the Knights are expecting too much emotion.
I just can't imagine that a man of his experience would let that interfere one way or another with the team's preparation.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
Coming up here, I'm going to look at it the same as if I was coming up here to play, and that's to work hard, to learn, hopefully have success.
Jane Altschwager came to Newcastle to play netball, and she'll leave the city for the same reason.
I knew that I'd have to go somewhere, it was just a matter of where, and I guess Adelaide was appealing because it's my home state and there are a lot of family and friends back there that can help me out with the move.
The 28-year-old, however, leaves behind friends and a career, a decision she says wasn't made lightly. A former captain of the Hunters National Netball League side, she was told in 2006 that her services were no longer needed. As things turned out, the Jaegers' days were numbered too.
From there, it was quite hard to pick up a team straight away. After that, it was like, well, I don't really want to leave this area, and I guess it's taken me 2 years to actually come to the fact that I'm going to have to play netball.
Altschwager, who's also a former Australian representative, will head to Adelaide in November. In a squad of 12, she'll play up front, keeping the right company as further national honours remain in the back of her mind.
Natalie von Berto has been named captain again down there, and she's also just picked up the Australian captaincy for the next lot of test matches. So I'll be happy to take a step back and just concentrate on my own game.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
It's an about-face the ambulance service didn't expect. In June, the State Rescue Board supported the service's proposal to relocate the unit from Hamilton to Charlestown, claiming this improved spread of resources will enhance response times and ensure the victims of emergencies receive help sooner from one of these specialist rescue units. The board also stated Newcastle and the Lower Hunter needed additional rescue units, but the board today told NBN News it now supports transferring the rescue units from ambulance ownership to the New South Wales fire brigades. It's not really us changing our mind, it's the circumstances changing, with the Minister for Health making her decision she was going to take rescue units out of ambulance operation. That's what drove the board to endorse the alternate plan 2 days ago. The State Rescue Board is very happy with it. It's something that's taking us in the right direction. On the political front, local MPs are distancing themselves from the dispute, unwilling to take sides in the controversial battle between our emergency services. The member for Newcastle saying, "I recognise the importance of both services, but I won't be drawn into the dispute."
I'd be very concerned if there's decision-making and processes being undertaken by the government that's going to be pitting these services against each other.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
At Whittingham, Ray Bergman is watching the bank fall into the Hunter River. As it shrinks, this island grows, fueling concerns about more erosion and sedimentation.
We're seeing our riverbanks going down to the Newcastle harbour, and that hurts us very much to see valuable river flats going down there.
Last night, about 40 concerned residents met to demand authorities clean up the river. They say nothing's been done to rehabilitate the area after last year's June floods, and the situation is getting worse, blaming the Hunter Central Rivers Catchment Management Authority for the state of the waterway.
They let the trees grow in the centre, it divides the water, it drives the water onto both banks, and it's just basically a disgrace.
Development in Singleton also raising fears.
We're paying a huge price at Whittingham for what is happening in Singleton, and nobody seems to be listening and nobody seems to care.
While the residents are battling to keep their pumps going and stop more of the bank being claimed by the Hunter River, they say their biggest concern is what could happen next time it floods.
Last time in June, nobody was killed, but our biggest worry is that in the future there will be loss of life.
I can warn Singleton now, look out Singleton.
The CMA says it's working with individual landholders to stabilise the riverbank, but isn't planning to remove the trees growing in the river because it says it's a sign the waterway is healthy. Penny Evans, NBN News.
We would like to see the status quo remain. We don't know when privatisation happens where the buyers are coming from. Are they going to be Australian owned? Are they going to come in from overseas? Why fix something that's not broken?
Work is full steam ahead at the new Maritime Centre on Wharf Road, with the attraction due to open on the 12th of October. Artefacts are being temporarily moved out to make way for the new interpretive exhibits, many of which are being prepared in Melbourne. But the project has been delayed by the theft of copper wiring from under the building. Thieves waded through water to steal the electrical cables, worth about $150 in scrap metal, but costing $10,000 to replace.
Cabling's been taken from underneath the building, so we've got no power. So that's all had to be put in differently so that it can't happen again.
Meantime, a team of volunteers is busy researching the stories that will reveal the Hunter's maritime history when the centre opens next month.
A lot of sound, a lot of light, a lot of technology, a lot of film. There'll be film clips going the whole way. We've put in a theaterette.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
I don't think it's the way everybody's going to get their groceries now. I think we'll always be a complementary channel to supermarkets.
Back in Newcastle, he's still a local hero, despite his drug admission last year. Andrew Johns chose his hometown to announce a 6-day fundraising walk from Newcastle to Sydney. According to his manager, it's not PR spin. It was Andrew's idea to give something back to the Black Dog Institute, which helps him manage his ongoing battle with bipolar disorder.
I just thought what a great way to give back. This time last year, I was in a real hole, and I lent on Professor Gordon Parker and the Black Dog, and they helped me out no end.
About 600,000 Australians have bipolar, a mood disorder involving periods of feeling high and low. It's hoped the walk will encourage those who suffer in silence to step forward and seek help.
I still get uncomfortable talking about it, so hopefully people can see that I'm come forward, and if people look up to me for whatever reason, then they can draw strength from that.
And Professor Gordon Parker believes Johns' leadership could save lives.
If we have leaders in the community step forward and talk about what they have done, that has an amazing effect.
For the doubters, Andrew reiterated that he didn't use bipolar as a scapegoat for his drug use.
Well, I came out publicly and said that I wasn't using bipolar disorder as an excuse. It was my own stupid fault that got me arrested in London.
High-profile Australians will join the walk, and one acceptance came as a surprise.
But the PM, it's sort of, it blew me away, and it's pretty special, so I thank him for his time.
The walk will begin on October 19. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Named on an extended bench, Danny Wicks didn't travel with the squad today, unable to shake a bout of sickness which forced his exclusion.
He had a pretty bad bug last week and was sick for a few days. We don't feel like he's recovered fully yet, so he'll be back here doing a bit more training and we'll get him ready for next week.
No such worries for Zeb Taylor. Yesterday, his coach was confident he would take his place. Today, though, no question.
He's come through quite well, so he'll play at some stage.
It's been a busy 24 hours for Matt Hilda. Newcastle, Sydney, Newcastle, Brisbane. But the travel's all been worth it so far in beating that spitting charge.
It was a great relief and a buzz for everybody. It was a bit of an ordeal for Matty, but he seems to have bounced back well today.
At the Jets, the club has moved to dismiss any suggestions its captain Jade North was denied a chance to play overseas when Newcastle officials received a late Danish offer at the weekend.
There was no specifics to that offer. The offer did not detail any numbers, figures or anything. All it said was that Jade North was they offered to take Jade on a loan deal.
He and keeper Ante Kovic are currently fulfilling Socceroos duties in Europe, while back home, their teammates enjoy the A-League break, although their coach is yet to be convinced the weekend off is worth it.
Yes, in regards to that we can do some more work on the training pitch to get things better. No, because like anything, you get hit for 5 and you want to right that wrong as soon as possible.
Canadian BJ Pelkey is the last import to leave the North Stars, going back to America where he'll play his 3rd consecutive season of pro ice hockey. He won a title with Tennessee team Knoxville before coming here and winning another with Newcastle.
A lot of guys play a lot of years just to get one, and fortunately this year I ended up winning one back on the stateside and then coming down here and being a part of another great team and taking down a 2nd championships.
Fellow import Mickey Gilchrist was part of the North Stars title chase, in which he also finished the league's highest scorer, 2 in front of BJ. The pair helped steer Newcastle to its 4th title in 6 years, beating old foes the West Sydney Ice Dogs at the weekend with a well-drilled stable of domestic players.
Every year the imports change, so we've got to rebuild, but the backbone I think has always been with our goalkeeping, our defence and our young players that we have coming through the system.
As for their imports, the club's already secured one, but says getting them to play for the North Stars has nothing to do with money.
It comes down to success and just good scouting. When you're playing well and you're successful, the guys want to come and play here.
The champagne hasn't been popped just yet, but there's still plenty of relief for those behind the anti-privatisation campaign.
Until I actually hear the words that privatisation is dead and gone, the retailers are safe, but I will celebrate tonight, but I'll have a bigger celebration when I hear those words.
The Minister for the Hunter, Michael Costa, will not be part of the new Reece team, but today's caucus meeting didn't consider the makeup of the next ministry. That will be decided on Sunday. Hunter MPs remained tight-lipped at Parliament on who could be the successor. But the unions have their own ideas about who should be the next Minister for the Hunter.
We'll support and lobby for local politicians who supported our campaign. That's, just to be blunt, that's exactly what we will do.
With countless protests, the majority of Hunter MPs listened to the objections of their constituents and opposed privatisation. But not all. Jodie McKay and Frank Terenzini supported it. What impact that could have on their fledgling political careers remains to be seen. As for Hunter projects,
there is a real need to trim back on expenditure.
that means the Belmont Hospital upgrade and a new unit at the James Fletcher could be on the endangered list, while the Mater and Singleton Hospital projects could also be up in the air. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Just talking about her Olympic experience is enough to bring a huge smile to 22-year-old Sarah Anderson's face. For 2 months, she worked alongside the world's greatest athletes, gathering quotes for the Olympic News Service.
It's very difficult to do this experience justice in a few words. I mean, when the rest of the world was at home watching Michael Phelps win 8 gold and Steph Rice win 3 gold medals in her first ever Olympics in their lounge rooms on the television, I was there by the poolside.
Sarah was one of 40 University of Newcastle journalism students who flew overseas for the prestigious job. Battling media scrums for athletes' attention certainly gave her some unique insight into the industry.
It certainly throws you in the deep end. It was a wonderful way to experience what the industry is really like, but at the same time we were being approached by journalists that have been in the industry for years in utter disbelief that we were given this experience as journalism students.
During the games, she worked non-stop every day.
And what was the pay like? We were there as volunteers, so the pay was non-existent.
Lake Macquarie's urban sprawl almost killed the waterway.
Well, if we go back 10, 15 years ago, the lake was close to being classified as a dead lake, eutrophic, and there's no doubt that that was the case. Over the last 10 to 5 years, we've started to see changes.
They've come about because of the practical measures Council put in place through the Lake Macquarie Improvement Project.
It's been reinstating native vegetation around the edge. It's been putting back in natural sloping beaches. It's been putting in wetlands.
The project has also seen 58 stormwater treatment devices installed along its shorelines and 6,000 cubic metres of sediment trapped and removed. Nursing the lake back to health has cost Council and the state government $23 million, but marine biodiversity is once again booming. The project has recently gained international recognition, awarded the National Tees River Prize and $150,000 in prize money.
People refer to as the Nobel Prize of river management.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
This tiny baby was born 16 weeks premature, weighing just 602 grams, about the same as a tub of butter. She's now about 6 weeks old and her parents Crystal and Paul are constantly keeping watch, seeing her grow stronger and a little bit bigger every day.
She gets a bath and weigh today and hopefully she reaches 1,000 grams.
Hope is something this Port Macquarie couple cling to, and that's the name they chose for their precious bundle of joy. Crystal described Hope's birth as a frightening experience, and she's not alone. There's about 17,000 preterm births in Australia every year. But a new computer program, which has already recorded a 92% success rate in trials, has been developed to help expectant mothers cope.
The computer program takes information from a pregnant woman and uses it to predict the likelihood of her delivering prematurely.
Researchers calibrate information about a woman's medical history along with current hormone levels from blood samples to identify the risk. The computer program means that mums can be better prepared for the likelihood of a premature birth, but they can also seek medical treatment.
We might suggest that the doctor prescribes, say, progesterone therapy to bring the pregnancy back on course.
We could have been prepared for it, it'd take a lot of stress off and wouldn't be so heart-wrenching.
The software will be further developed and trialled over the next 3 years. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
A new dad and armed with a new deal to stay at Newcastle, Mark Tafua can hardly believe it. The Knights beating off the Cowboys and last-minute interest from Melbourne to retain the late bloomer.
It was a good opportunity to go there, but I've got to repay the faith that Brian Smith's put in me, so yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
His teammates also considering this was the alternative. They know just how hard he can hit, but he nearly didn't get to make his mark at all. Less than 2 years ago, Tafua was playing rugby with mates at Newcastle club the Waratahs. But after winning a premiership, he rolled the dice on a rugby league career, and it's paid off. And a big game tonight against Brisbane will help not only his team, but excise some demons as well.
Last year, I dislocated my wrist and we got smashed up there and it was a long plane ride home. So yeah, hopefully we can turn the tables this week.
While Tafua's staying, Matt White is off to the Gold Coast next season. He's been playing each match like a mini farewell and knows tonight could be his last in a Knights jumper.
I saw what to do, I suppose. I'll just go out there to do my job and do a good job for the boys, so hopefully can do that this week.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Only the brave were beachside today, and they were young. The Pro Junior circuit has set up camp at One Mile Beach this weekend with conditions that are a battle on all fronts.
It takes at least 5 minutes to get back out the back, and then you got 6 foot sets pounding on your head. There's a rip. It's about 50 knot winds, so yeah, it's really tough conditions.
But that didn't stop them from going out all the same. Heath Joske actually looked like he was having fun in the big sets, which came thundering through as he easily claimed his round 2 heat.
Howling onshore, but once you get out there, there's a nice bank out there and it's pretty fun.
Ty Watson proved the giant killer, beating top seed Owen Wright as both made it through to round 3.
Usually 1 foot offshore, so hard to surf. This one's totally opposite, fully onshore, big, and just so much hard work.
Finals are on Sunday.
A deepening low-pressure system near the east coast is to blame for the lashing rain and strong winds we've seen across the Hunter. In Newcastle, beaches were closed due to dangerous surf, and coal ships stationed off the coast headed out to deep sea. While at Gateshead, the roof was blown off a St Vincent's de Paul building, and Energy Australia workers were kept busy as winds gusted up to 50 knots in Port Stephens. Several power poles were blown over, leaving around 1,500 people without electricity in Anna Bay. But the SES says people don't need to panic. The conditions are nowhere near as bad as those in June last year.
According to the Bureau of Meteorology, the rainfall is not as bad as it was. Most of our problems has been associated with the strong winds, and there's been very, very few reports of so-called flash flooding.
Dungog has been hardest hit by the storm, with the Williams River peaking at 7.3 metres at midday. That's caused some minor flooding, but the water level is now receding. An average of 139 millimetres of rain has fallen across the region in the past 48 hours. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Oh, Nathan's a fantastic bloke, and he is a great bloke. He's Nathan and I came in together, and I think that he has said he may be short on parliamentary experience, but he's got the life experience.
That sort of amount of money is going to make a big difference to a lot of families. I mean, we've had more than 5,000 families stay here at Ronald McDonald House since 1991, and more than 500 every year are here now. So it's great to be able to make a difference for kids.
We would have liked to have been in a good position where we could have just sat back and be ready for next week, but we're making it a bit hard on ourselves.
In the middle of all this is a surf contest. Driven by a deep low just off the coast, some monster sets drove around the point at 1 Mile Beach. And if they weren't Australia's best juniors, the contest simply wouldn't have gone ahead.
It's just about as bad as it gets out there. And conditions, we've got 5 to 6 metre swell and 40 to 50 knot winds. It's treacherous.
I didn't think it could get any more wild than yesterday, but it seems to have, and it's a big challenge out there, but when you get them, it's rewarding.
Sam Patterson agrees. After a patient wait in his opening heat, the Central Coast board rider picked his takeoff to a T, with a 9.25 ride setting the standard for the day.
It's the furthest I've ever gone, so anything here's past the bonus, so I'm stoked.
In contrast, Jake Sharp was anything but. Complications relating to a power blackout meant he arrived after his heat had begun. A broken fin on his board added to frustrations, and his problems only continued on a forgettable day.
I sort of paddled down the beach hoping that I might get away, even though I got stuck out there and couldn't get in.
Conditions are expected to ease for the finals tomorrow, but with rides like these on offer, some won't mind either way.